Once again, Christian greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world, even more particularly to all Shepherd's Rod believers, and most especially to our beloved brothers and sisters in the United States of America. Special greetings to our brethren in Colorado, Kansas, in Georgia, and Missouri, and Texas, Chicago, Illinois, Arkansas, in California, in New York, in Fiji Island, Mexico, Spain, in Africa, Pakistan, Zambia, to the United Kingdom, to our brethren in Australia, and also our brethren in Malaysia, and to the rest of the 144,000 living saints scattered abroad. Greetings. May the good Lord bless you, my dear brothers and sisters. This is our special episode number 6, the last final warning message just prior to the close of provision. And this time, I would like to focus our attention to the time prophecy. And this word prophecy, called it the given time. Here in the Great Controversy, on page 323, it says, another kind of evidence that vitally affected my mind was the chronology of the scriptures. I found that predicted events, which had been fulfilled in the past, often occurred within a given time. Then it says, the events limited by these times were all once only a matter of prophecy and were fulfilled in accordance with the predictions. The last part. The events limited by these times were all once only a matter of prophecy and were fulfilled in accordance with the predictions. The same with the statement in 2SR 183. It says, but those who believed went into the ark at a given time, and the door was closed. I'd like to read again. It says, but those who believed went into the ark at a given time, and the door was closed. To SR 183. And then it says, the door that was shut is a symbol showing that provision for the church had closed just shortly after the foolish virgins became alarmed. At last they were willing to pay the price and buy the oil. But it was not a change of heart, only the fear of losing out. Their course of action had left them without the seal. The man with the writer's inkhorn had passed them by. What a terrible mistake, what a disappointment, we must say, but entirely lost. So those who believed the message went into the ark at a given time. But that is only an illustration of the close of provision for the church. There is a given time. And the spirit prophecy called it the open and shut door. And in Selected Messages, Book 1, page 62 and 63, it is called the shut door defined. So it says here in page 63, there was a shut door in Noah's day. There was at that time a withdrawal of the Spirit of God from the sinful race that perished in the waters of the flood. God himself gave the shut door message to Noah. My spirit shall not always strive with men, for that he also is flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years. So that was the shut door message given by God in the days of Noah. And in the parable of Jesus Christ, from Matthew, Mark, Luke, the comparison is in the days of Noah. I would like to read this reading in Bible commentary 1 BC 1088. Bible commentary 1 BC 1088. It says, God granted them 120 years of provision in which to consider, and during that time preached to them through Seth, Enoch, and Noah. They were represented as men shut up in prison. Had they listened to the testimony of these faithful witnesses, had they repented and returned to their loyalty, God would not have destroyed them. It says, God determined to purify the world by a flood, but in mercy and love, He gave the antediluvians a provision of 120 years. During this time, while the ark was building, the voices of Noah, Methuselah, and many others were heard in warning and entreaty, and every blow struck on the ark was a warning message. Bible commentary Volume 1, page 1088. I remember the statement in White House Recruiter on page 10. White House Recruiter, page 10, it says, "How shall he deliver anyone who fails to heed the signs of the times, the thunderings of the dread drums of doomsday, now flashing in our eyes and rumbling in our ears, with warning more awful than the flaming thunders of Sinai? No, he could no more deliver such spiritually blind, deaf, and dumb incurables than he could have delivered the antediluvians who failed to go into Noah's Ark." White House Recruiter on page 10. And the occurrence in the days of Noah, according to the shepherd's rod, should serve as a reminder to us that we should not be presumptuous as were they. I'd like to read 1 TG, number 12, page 28. It says, "Thus all, both good and bad," so not only the bad, but as well as the good, "there are many good people that perish in the destruction of the flood." So it says here, 1 TG number 12, page 28, "Thus all, both good and bad, who choose to remain outside the ark, perish." The antediluvians' experience should serve as a reminder to us that we be not presumptuous as were they. We should instead take to heart the clear warning that is pertinent to this hour. For we are told that as it was in the days of the flood, so it shall it be at the time of the Lord's coming. 1 TG, number 12, page 28. So, to repeat again, our subject today is concerning the time prophecy and the given time. If God gave, or if there was a given time of provisionary time in the days of Noah, then for sure, there must also be a given time as a provisionary time given unto us in the last generation of men. And as far as the shepherd's rod is thus concerned, such given time is pointing to the 6,000 years prophecy. So I would like to read here on Tract number 3, 1934 edition. It says here, Tract number 3, 1934 edition, page 71. It says, "Therefore, our symbolical number of the Bible time, 600, must be multiplied by 10. Thus, 600 times 10 equals 6,000 years of provisionary time. This proves the length of time Christ will be a Savior for sinners, and that our sinful world will be 6,000 years old when probation closes, and that we are living in the time of the end. It also proves that Christ is the only Savior of the world, in perfect harmony with the Word. For there is none other name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved." Acts 4, verse 12. And that 6,000 years provisionary time, brothers and sisters, the reason that it was written and given by God to His servant, this truth must be revealed to His children. I remember the statement on Tract number 3, 1934 edition, page 67. It says, "This subject to some may seem as strange as the thought of the earth revolving on its axis was to the inhabitants of another day. Nevertheless, incredible things often become plain facts. Hence, though we little know of the many biblical numbers and their secret code of truth at the present time, they are not always to be dark elements to God's people, for they must be there to discover and illuminate to our vision the signposts on our way to the holy city." So there are many biblical numbers by which B.T. Hotep says that in their days, they did not know as yet the secret code. But it is guaranteed that such biblical numbers will not always to be dark elements to God's people, for they must be there. Or in other words, there is no reason for God to place it in the golden bowl and then to remain it forever in a mystery. I remember the statement in Answerer number 2. It says, page 75, These prophecies must therefore be revealed in order to strengthen the church in her final warfare. Otherwise, for what purpose were they written? So all the prophecies that had been recorded, whether in the Bible or writings of Sister Wine or the Shepherd's Rod publications, it must be revealed. Otherwise, for what purpose that they had been written? So there must be a divinely appointed time by which those prophecies must be completely revealed. Now, what is the statement, brethren, on the Shepherd's Rod? Our sinful world would be 6,000 years old when probation closes. So our sinful world, let us read again the statement. So, in tract number 3, 1934 edition, page 71, it says, that our sinful world will be 6,000 years old when probation closes. So, I do fully believe that this prophecy must be revealed. The 6,000 years prophecy by which our sinful world would be 6,000 years old when probation closes. So, that is the probationary time given by God to all humanity. And of course, God is all-time, or God is God who keeps the time very accurate. I remember the statement in 1SR on page 153 saying, for God keeps accurate time. 1SR 153. For God keeps accurate time. Now, since our subject is the age of the earth, pertaining to the sinful earth, in 2SR, page, let's read the statement. In 2SR, page 237, it says, 2SR page 237, the time allowed for its movement is marked on God's clock dial as 3 hours. The first 3 hours on the dial indicate from creation to the fall of Adam. So, the first 3 hours, that is the time when the earth are still in her sinless state. So, there are 3 parabolical hours from creation to the fall of man. So, according to the Shepherd's Rod, the first 3 hours on the clock dial indicates that is from creation to the fall of Adam. And I invite all my fellow Shepherd's Rod believers to listen carefully with this presentation. Now, I would like to read 2SR. Let's read the statement here. Page 34 to page 41. 2SR, page 34 and page 41. It says, a record of a divine survey of this world's history from creation to the redemption or to redemption would be of great importance at this present time. I would like to read again. 2SR page 34 and page 41. It says, a record of a divine survey of this world's history from creation to redemption would be of great importance at this present time. In an age of infidelity, atheism, and hypocrisy, men who profess to be wise in secular as well as religious matters have lost sight of the source of true wisdom and knowledge. Because that when they knew God, they glorified Him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they become fools. Romans chapter 1, verse 21 and verse 22. Even those who profess to be teachers of righteousness have forfeited their faith in the biblical reckoning of creation. God, having knowledge of the present deceptive denial of His holy word, has devised a prophetic blueprint in symbols of beasts, wings, ribs, horns, heads, crowns, etc., by which He points out in this prophetic panorama the facts with a force that should humiliate men and show them their utter ignorance and lack of wisdom. 2SR page 34 and page 41. So I would like to focus to the statement saying biblical reckoning of creation. So we need to have the biblical reckoning. Since our subject is concerning the age of this sinful world, or the age of this sinful earth, by which the shepherd's rod says, at the general close of provision, the world would be 6,000 years old. And God keeps accurate time. When God says 6,000 years old, it is not more than 6,000. Neither 1 year short to be 6,000. It should be exactly 6,000. Because God is infallible God. It says in 1 SR 232. As God is infallible, His word is spelled perfection, even to one jot or to one tittle. So what we need to do now is to find out how does the earth is to be measured. First of all, I would like to read answerer number 3. On page 10, it says, thus we see, page 10, answerer number 3. Thus we see that His great and never-erring timepiece for earth, the earth's own invariable movements. So I would like to read again. Answerer number 3, page 10. Thus we see that His great and never-erring timepiece for earth, the earth's own invariable movements. So that is how the earth revolved on its axis. Here and 11 symbolic code number 4. On page 6, 11 symbolic code number 4, page 6. In the beginning, the evening and the morning were the first day. Day is a measurement of time, and God created it. The day, as you know, is composed of 24 hours, an hour being merely a shorter measurement of time. 11 symbolic code number 4, page 6. Then it says, since the earth can measure but 24 hours each time it turns on its axis, earth then has as its only means of time measurement its rotation on its axis and its circuit through its orbit. So, the only time measurement of this earth is the rotation of the earth on its axis. And the earth began to punctuate even in the time when the sun, the moon, and the stars were not as yet created. Now let us read the statement on answerer number 3 on page 7 and page 8. It says, the 24-hour cycle begins at sunset because at the moment the earth came into existence and began to rotate on its axis, there was no light upon the face of the deep, whereupon God said, let there be light, and there was light, and the evening and the morning were the first day. Genesis chapter 1, verse 2. 3 and 5. The light which shone on the first day, and by which God divided the day from the night, set the earth revolving on its axis, was not, however, that of the sun. For the sun and the moon were not created until the fourth day, when He spoke them forth to rule over the day and over the night. Genesis 1 verse 18, which He had beforehand established. Thus it was that whereas the earth began punctuating eternal time, with the first night of creation week, you see, from which the weekly seventh-day Sabbath is measured. Answerer number 3, pages 7 and page 8. So, the earth began to rotate on its axis even before the sun and the moon were created. And the only time measurement of the earth is the earth's own invariable movements. How the earth does rotate on its axis, according to the Shepherd's Rod publications. Now, let us read first tract number 6 on page 20 and page 21. Although there are many passages, but I would like to give just one. I think it is already sufficient. It says, these olive trees are called witnesses, anointed ones, prophets. They were to prophesy in sackcloth for the space of 42 months. This is a period equivalent to that in Daniel 7 verse 25 and Revelation 12 verse 14. That is, to a time and times and the dividing of time. A time 1 year, times 2 years, half a time, half a year. 42 months in total. It is equivalent also to that in Revelation 13 verse 5, 40 and 2 months. And to that in Revelation 12 verse 6, 1,203 score days. In each instance, the time reckoning by the biblical rule of 30 days to a month amounts to 1,260 days. So here, tract number 6, page 20 and 21, the Shepherd's Rod says, the biblical rule of reckoning the prophecy. Bible prophecy must be reckoned with Bible reckoning. And Bible reckoning consists only 30 days every month and 12 months in a year. Therefore, 360 days in 1 year. So, the earth will rotate on its axis 360 days. That is 1 year, brothers and sisters. And it does not depend on the sun. The sun is given by God to know the seasons, but not as the measurement of the age of the earth. The only time measurement so that we could reckon the 6,000 years prophecy is the earth invariable movements, its rotation on its axis. That each year, there must be 360 days, and that the earth began to punctuate on the very first day on the creation week, according to the Shepherd's Rod, by which there are still 3 days before the sun and the moon were created. I remember the statement on tract number 10, by which B.T. Hotep says, they will lose a phantom period. Tract number 10 on page 32 and page 33. The weekly cycle is neither solar nor lunar. So I would like to read again. Tract number 10, pages 32 and page 33. The weekly cycle is neither solar nor lunar. The Sabbath on which the Lord rested was exactly 6 days after the moment creation began. And remember, the statement in 2SR, it says, from creation, right? You remember in 2SR page 34? It says, a record, 2SR page 34, a record of a divine survey of this world's history from creation to redemption would be of great importance at this present time. So, from creation to redemption. Now, I would like to read again. Tract number 10, page 32 and page 33. The Sabbath on which the Lord rested was exactly 6 days after the moment creation began. Then on the seventh day he rested, Genesis 2 verse 2. Had he, though blessed a day, which is ruled by the moon, he would have been rested the 10th day, for the moon was not created until the 4th day of creation. See Genesis 1, verse 14 to verse 19. But keeping a Sabbath on the 7th day from the creation of the moon would not have been in commemoration of creation, but in commemoration of the moon. And it says, the first sabbatical week of creations being 3 days older than both the sun and the moon makes it clear that neither of the luminaries can regulate the week of creation. Such a regulatory force would of necessity have deprived time and creation of the first 3 days, leaving them as a phantom loss period. So that is very plain here in tract number 10, page 32 and page 33. And it's very important, the significance of the weekly Sabbath, because in 1SR, the Shepherd's Rod says that here in 123, 1SR page 123. Let's read the statement. It says, Abraham, the father of the faithful, is the symbol of faith. Isaac, the symbol of spirit of truth. 1SR page 123. So let's read the statement. 1SR page 123. Abraham, the father of the faithful, is the symbol of faith. Isaac, the symbol of spirit of truth. As the Bible says, he was born after the Spirit. Jacob, the symbol of grace, for as he was a sinful man. Had it not been for the grace of God, he could not have prevailed. The Exodus movement is the symbol for baptism, for we read in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 2, and were all baptized unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea. The wilderness life is the symbol of the sanctuary question. At the end of the 2,300 days, it was in the wilderness that the heavenly sanctuary was described by the earthly. The promised land is a symbol of the Sabbath rest. So it says, the promised land is a symbol of the Sabbath rest. In the promised land, they were to rest had they driven out the heathen. But because of national pride and disbelief, they failed to obtain the promised rest. The disobedience of Israel in the promised land is a symbol of our failing to obey God at the present time. 1SR page 123. So, very significant, the weekly cycle, the Sabbath rest, because it is a symbol of the promised land. So, if we will be studying the promised land, we need to study the weekly Sabbath. And the weekly Sabbath, neither lunar, neither solar, because the measurement of the weekly Sabbath is based on the rotation of the earth on its axis. So the statement in Tract number 10 that God preserved intact throughout the generation, the weekly cycle, indicating that there was no period of time that the earth stopped revolving. But there is a historical event that the sun stopped revolving, brothers and sisters, for 12 hours in the days of Joshua. Now, I would like to read tract number 10 on tract number 10 on page 38. It says, "Do the nations of today do not follow the biblical monthly calendar that in no wise alters the fact that the original weekly cycle has never been changed. And as it is entirely independent of both the solar and the lunar calendars, had God not preserved it intact throughout all the ages, the saints now, in the times of restitution of all things, would have great difficulty to restore it and to vindicate its integrity." Logically, the word restore must be applied only to the things that had been broken, to the things that had been destroyed. And the only things that had been broken and destroyed is the monthly calendar and the yearly calendar. But the weekly cycle never been changed, never been broken. Therefore, there is no need for restoration of the weekly cycle due to the fact that it was not destroyed. And the principal reason why God preserved intact the weekly cycle, to serve as the only guide of the saints in the time of restitution of all things. What time is that? By which all things are to be restored. 1 TG number 28, page 15. "The great and dreadful day of the Lord, the judgment for the living, the day in which all things are to be restored." Mark chapter 9, verse 12. 1 TG 28:15. 1 TG number 28, page 15, it says, "The great and dreadful day of the Lord, the judgment for the living, the day in which all things are to be restored." So the divinely appointed time by which all things are to be restored is in the judgment for the living, the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Although the great day and the dreadful day in reality do not occur the same period of time as far as the occurrence is on the earth, or the happenstance is on the earth. The great day, it is pointing to the sealing of the 144,000. Let me read to you tract number 15. Tract number 15 on page 58. It says, "Moreover, as the first phase of the judgment passes with the 6th chapter of Revelation," tract number 15, page 58. "Moreover, as the first phase of the judgment passes with the 6th chapter of Revelation, the second phase begins with the 7th chapter. That is, it begins with the sealing of the living saints, the first fruits. It is the great day for the righteous." So the great day is the sealing of the 144,000. And of course, the dreadful day is the day of slaughtering. And that is after the 144,000 are completely sealed. So the conjunction end separates the two events. The great day, the sealing of the 144,000, and the dreadful day, the day of slaughtering. The same with the statement in tract number 8 on page 60, saying, "Proclaiming the great and dreadful day of the Lord, a day of slaughter and a day of darkness." So the dreadful day, in reality, is pointing to the day of slaughter, a day of darkness. Because for an all-just God, a merciful God, brothers and sisters, it is not a great day, the day of slaughtering, because that is a strange work. Or in other words, God has no desire to destroy anybody. But we as human beings, we force God to implement such destruction. Now let us go back to our main subject concerning the 6,000 years prophecy, by which the shepherd says our sinful world would be 6,000 years old when probation closes. I would like to read this reading, The Great Controversy, 518. It says, The Great Controversy, page 518. The great controversy between Christ and Satan that has been carried forward for nearly 6,000 years is soon to close. Well, it was written in 1888, and the prophet says, soon to close. If it is soon to close in the days of Sister White, how much more in our days? In reality, both Sister White and Betty Hunter has no definite understanding concerning the age of the earth. The only thing that both of them has common understanding, that the earth will be 6,000 years old when probation closes, pointing to the general close of provision. The earth would be 6,000 years old. But they did not know the age of the earth in their lifetime because the creation calendar was not as yet unfolded in their days. For the reason that such knowledge and information was not intended to them because they will die prior to the event when the 6,000 years will be ended. And undoubtedly, such information is preserved by God to the last generation of men, you and I, my dear brothers and sisters. And it is illogical and impalpable inconsistency that God would reveal it after the event. Then how could we be able to prepare? The same with the statement in tract number 2, saying, tract number 2 on page 12, never has this symbolical prophecy been understood by any people, and never could it have been fulfilled and not been revealed. So it says, never could it have been fulfilled and not been revealed. So that is the divine principle, brothers and sisters, that before the prophecy will be fulfilled, God would reveal it first. And of course, the revelation must be to the people by which they themselves will experience the fulfillment of such predicted event. Now let us read here in the Great Controversy 518. The great controversy between Christ and Satan that has been carried forward for nearly 6,000 years is soon to close. And the wicked one redoubles his efforts to defeat the work of Christ in man's behalf, and to fasten souls in his snares, to hold the people in darkness and impenitence till the Savior's mediation is ended. And there is no longer a sacrifice for sin, is the object which he seeks to accomplish. So the devil wants the people to hold them in darkness, according to this reading, and the devil redoubles his efforts, that if possible, the people will remain in total ignorance concerning the plan of redemption that have been carried in the heavenly sanctuary. But it is impossible because God is powerful God. I remember the statement in For Symbolic Code number 10 to 12, page 3. For Symbolic Code number 10 to 12, page 3, it says, all must honestly agree that to leave the church out of prophecy at any time is illogical and also impossible. For God has never left his people in darkness, and he surely would not do so now at the most important time in the world's history. And I think the most important time in the world's history, brothers and sisters, is the coming of Christ. Now, let's read 2SR 242. 2SR page 242. It says, it would have been unreasonable and an injustice to the chosen people of God if we should have left them in darkness concerning the time of the most important event of all church history, the coming Christ. 2SR page 242. But that coming of Christ cannot be in reality visible coming. It points out to the invisible coming Jesus Christ. And that is our subject today, to prove to you that the information given in the Bible as interpreted by the shepherd's rod is sufficient. Otherwise, that statement in 1TG number 10, page 18, it says, the Bible contains the complete plan of salvation for all humanity. How do I know this? I know it because its story begins with creation and ends with the earth made new. Between the first and the last pages of the Bible, then lies the complete formula for man's salvation and redemption. And of course, the only inspired commentary in the Bible prophecy is the two golden pipes, brothers and sisters, or the golden bowl. But that statement in volume 8, I would like to read Testimonies for the Church. Testimonies for the Church on volume 8, on page 298, it says, we must follow the direction given through the spirit of prophecy. Testimonies for the Church, volume 8, page 298. It says, we must follow the directions given through the spirit of prophecy. We must love and obey the truth for this time. This will save us from accepting strong delusions. God has spoken to us through His Word. He has spoken to us through the testimonies to the church and through the books that have helped to make plain our present duty and the position that we should now occupy. The warnings that have been given line upon line, precept upon precept, should be heeded. If we disregard them, what excuse can we offer? So the statement, and through the books that have helped to make plain our present duty and the position that we should now occupy. The books must be only pertaining to the writings that had been recommended by both prophets, Sister White and Betty Hotep, must be included in our study. All others that you cannot read in the shepherd's rod that Betty Hotep or Sister White recommends it, we need to consider it as outside sources because it was not introduced and recommended by the two golden pipes. So, I would like to read that statement in tract number 3. It says, page 94, tract number 3, page 94, in order, consequently, to maintain the false idea resulting from his foreign point of view, he is led to resort to outside sources, to one commentator or the other, to this version or to that, to technicalities and inferences of language, in the Greek, in the Hebrew, in this, in that, or in the other languages, none of which it is likely he himself either reads or writes. Or to referring to this or to that so-called original manuscripts, which in all probability he has never seen. Tract number 3, page 94. Brethren, outside sources must be those books, those writings, never been recommended by Sister White or Betty Hotep. The only books that we need to consider as a part of the Golden Bowl are those writings, the books recommended by Sister White and Betty Hotep. For example, Alonzo Jones and Elite Wagoner, recommended by them. Let us read 2SR. 2SR page 277. It says 2SR 277. In 1888, just such a message, decree, went forth, but the leaders at that time rejected it as the following testimonies prove the Lord in His great mercy sent a most precious message to His people. This message was to bring more prominently before the world the uplifted Savior, the sacrifice for the sins of the whole world. It presented justification through faith in the surety. It invited the people to receive the righteousness of Christ, which is made manifest in obedience to all the commandments of God. Many have lost sight of Jesus. Testimonies to Ministers, page 91. So, both of them regarded the message brought by Alonzo Jones and Wagoner as the most precious message cometh from God. Therefore, the message delivered by these two servants of God, Alonzo Jones and Wagoner, ended, and the shepherds had called it, and also Sister White, the most precious message. And it says, cometh from heaven. And I would like to read again to establish our faith, brothers and sisters. Here in 1TG number 14, on page 22, the only portion by which it is not well explained by many shepherds rod believers. In Zechariah chapter 4, they will explain that the two olive trees, that is the Old and the New Testament, the two golden pipes, that is Sister White and Betty Hotep. But how about the 7 tubes? Now, I would like to read here, brothers and sisters. 1 TG number 14, page 22. And the 7 tubes, the entire ministry. What is the 7 tubes? The entire ministry. Convey from the golden bowl, the golden oil to the 7 golden lamps to the entire laity. So what does it mean by the word entire? Meaning, as a whole. So the 7 tubes represent the entire ministry. Now let us read tract number 6. Tract number 6, page 62. It says, in the vision of Zechariah chapter 1, we note that the horses whom the Lord hath sent to walk to and fro through the earth have the gift of speech. For they answered the angel of the Lord and said, we have walked to and fro through the earth. The obvious import of this symbolism is that these horses can talk and that they are serving the Lord in going where He sends them. They therefore can be symbolical only of the Lord's servants, the ministry that is sent. You see, the ministry that is sent. How many horses? In Zechariah chapter 1, can we project that chart in Zechariah chapter 1 concerning, you remember, the chart of Betty Hotep, Zechariah chapter 1. Okay, maybe it is not difficult to see the chart. How many horses? 4, you see? And the 4th one, there is a man riding on that horse. But the 3 horses, there is no man riding on the 3 horses. So as far as Zechariah chapter 1 is thus concerned, there are 4 horses. You can read in the Bible, but it is even more easier to look at the chart drawn by the prophet, Betty Hotep. There are 4 horses. And according to the voice of inspiration, the horses represents God's messengers. And the 3 horses, of course, one of the 3 horses is William Miller, and the other 2 is his associates. And according to tract number 6, page 62, that is the ministry sent by God. Now, let us read tract number 2. Here in tract number 2 on page, let us read the statement given by the Shepherd's Rod. Tract number 2, here the Shepherd's Rod made it so plain. On page 29, it says, to William Miller and his co-laborers, it was given to preach the warning in America. This country became the center of the Great Advent movement. The writings of Miller and his associates were carried to distant lands. Wherever missionaries have penetrated in all the world, were sent the glad tidings of Christ's speedy return. Now, as far as the Shepherd's Rod is thus concerned, the writings of Miller and his associates, that are inspired writings, because it was sent by God, according to tract number 6, page 62. So, here we can easily discern that the 7 tubes represents the 7 messengers. Number 7 indicates completeness. So, the first 3, that is William Miller and his associates, that is Joshua Hibbs, and what is the other one? I forgot the name. That had been introduced by Sister White. Hello. Do we have done enumeration number 7? Sylvester Bless. I will read to you in our other study, but at this time, just to introduce to you that the only sources that had been given by God are these 7 tubes. William Miller, Joshua Hibbs, Sylvester Bless, and Ellen G. White, Alonzo Jones, Elite Wagoner, and then Betty Hotep. There are only 7 inspired writings within the Golden Bowl, brothers and sisters. So, as far as Zechariah chapter 4 is thus concerned, that 7 tubes that cometh from the Golden Bowl is to let us know that the Golden Bowl contain, brothers and sisters, the writings of the 7 inspired writers. Although, all of them, we need to study in the light of the Shepherd's Rod. I would like to read again the statement in Answerer number 5. Answerer number 5, page 56, it says, teach only in the light of the rod. So, those inspired writings, William Miller, Joshua Hibbs, Sylvester Bless, Ellen G. White, Alonzo Jones, Wagoner, we need to teach in the light of the rod. But to consider another writings after the shepherd's rod had been written, brothers and sisters, could no longer be found in Zechariah chapter 4. And that's what it means in 2SR 287 and 288. I would like to read to you. 2SR page 287 and 288. It says, what is inspired and what is not. You see? What is inspired and what is not. Then it says, 2SR 287 and 288. What is inspired and what is not. Cunning men, under the power of the great deceiver, with good words and fair speeches, have sought to overthrow the faith of the saints in the word of God by almost innumerable interpretations of the scriptures and multiplicity of sects, making it nearly impossible for one to find his way out through the confusion and thus keeping him in ignorance of the truth. God, knowing beforehand of these cunning devices, has prophetically illustrated the truth by this candlestick in its assemblage of parts, symbolically showing that the truth of the Bible is revealed by inspiration only. Written words can be misconstrued, but symbols cannot, thus making it possible for both learned and unlearned to immediately distinguish the difference between truth and error. You see, the statement says, has prophetically illustrated the truth by this candlestick in its assemblage of parts, symbolically showing that the truth of the Bible is revealed by inspiration only. And there are only 7 tubes, brothers and sisters. The number in Zechariah 4 is even literal. The 2 olive trees, that is literal. 2 testaments, Old and New Testament. The 2 golden pipes, that is literal. 2 prophets. Tract number 6, 23 and 24. But since the 2 prophets, they are the one who put it into one golden bowl. And then from that golden bowl cometh 7 tubes, indicates clearly, according to the shepherd's rod, that the 7 tubes represents the entire ministry sent by God. And the shepherd's rod made it so plain that that ministry in the book of Zechariah, of course, Zechariah chapter 1 must be in perfect harmony with Zechariah chapter 4. And God sent in Zechariah chapter 1 3 horses, William Miller and his associates, that is Joshua Hives and Sylvester Bless. That is the first 3 messengers that had been sent by God. And the mere fact that God commanded them to produce writings, then the writings must be a part of the plan of redemption. The statement in 2SR on page 100, let us read. 2SR page 194, it says, God does not make vain repetitions, neither would he waste the time of his servants to write them. 2SR 194. God does not make vain repetitions, neither would he waste the time of his servants to write them. Therefore, every little symbol has its meaning and reveals a great truth. If William Miller is God-inspired servant, God would not waste the time of William Miller to write those messages if there is no accurate significance. According to that statement, look at John the Baptist. Jesus Christ said that John the Baptist is the greatest of all the prophets, but John the Baptist has no writings. You see, brothers and sisters? Therefore, when God commanded his servant to write messages, their writings must be included in our investigation. Or in other words, at least there must be a part in the writings of Miller, in the writings of Joshua Hives, the writings of Sylvester Bless, that contribute the plan of redemption. Otherwise, God would not waste the time of his servant to write those messages. The writings of Alonzo Jones, the writings of Elite Wagoner, and the writings of Sister White, there must be something that contributed to the plan of redemption. Why is it that the writings of Martin Luther, John Knox, Wesley Campbell here are not included? Because they have no new revelation. According to the voice of inspiration, they only revived the truth that was already taught by the apostles. But from the time of William Miller being a part of the parable in Matthew 20, plainly indicating that there is a new revelation in the days of William Miller. So here, brothers and sisters, I am trying to establish to you before we will push forward that the entire plan of redemption were already completely unfolded in the Bible as interpreted by the inspired comments, inspired interpreters. And they are represented by the 7 tubes in Zechariah chapter 4. But the divine principle is that we need to teach their writings in the light of the shepherd's rod, or the final and the ultimate conclusion must be based on the shepherd's rod publications. And to say that there are still other writings after the shepherd's rod publications, well, we have an individual freedom. But for me, in the Laymans movement, we could not see any proof at all that there are still another inspired writings to follow after Beethoven. Because the Bible is very plain. Hear ye the rod. Micah 6 verse 9. And the shepherd's rod called it singular fulfillment. Let us read that in Leviticus of the Bedean. There must be only singular fulfillment. On page 4, it says, and to call attention, Leviticus of the Bedean, and to call attention to the singular fulfillment of Micah's prophecy. You see, singular fulfillment of the prophecy recorded in Micah chapter 6 verse 9, indicating that that rod mentioned in Micah 6:9 must be referred only to the writings of Beethoven. So, brothers and sisters, if you are willing and sincere and honest, please follow this revelation on our next episode. We will just make a short break. I just established to you, I would like to enumerate one by one that any information which is not recommended by Sister White and Beethoven could not be a part of the Golden Bowl. And it is outside sources. And the second principle is that all of the writings must be interpreted in the light of the shepherd's rod. And the third one is that since our main objective is to study the age of the earth, by which the earth will be 6,000 years old when probation closes, the sinful world, the only time measurement of the earth is the earth revolving on its axis. It is neither lunar, neither solar, but rather the earth revolving on its axis. And the earth revolved on its axis 360 days in 1 year. So, the biblical reckoning must be reckoned by 12 months in 1 year and 30 days every month. 12 times 30 equals 360 days every year. Therefore, we need to convert 6,000 years times 360 days. Because only through the weekly cycle we can ascertain clearly the exact day by which that is the day when the earth will be 6,000 years old. By counting the days, 6,000 times 360 days, that would be 2,160,000 days. Therefore, from the time the man was fallen into sin, you need only to count 2,160,000 days. Then that is the time by which probation closed. The earth would be 6,000 years old. So we will continue this subject on the next episode. Thank you very much for listening and viewing this program, hoping that you will continue listening so that you could be able to discern and ascertain clearly what is the age of the earth at this present time, the year 2021. Thank you very much. May the good Lord bless you and have a beautiful, wonderful evening.